Greek Prime Minister Alexis Tsipras has arrived in Brussels for an emergency Eurozone summit 2 days after Greek voters overwhelmingly turned down the terms of an international bailout in an historic rejection of austerity. On Sunday, Greeks, by a 61 to 39% margin, voted against further budget cuts and tax hikes in exchange for a rescue package from European creditors. Tsipras is scrambling to present a new bailout proposal as Greek banks remain shut down. If Greek banks run out of money and the country has to print its own currency, it could mean a state leaving the euro for the first time since it was launched in 1999. German Chancellor Angela Merkel and French President François Hollande met in Paris Monday to discuss the crisis.
We have been paying close attention to the voting result, and we respect Greece's referendum. The door remains open for discussions. It is now up to the government of Alexis Tsipras to make serious, credible proposals so that this willingness to stay in the Eurozone can be realized.
In Athens, Euclid Tsakalotos was sworn in as Greece's new finance minister, replacing Yanis Varoufakis, who resigned following Sunday's referendum. Tsakalotos had served as Greece's main bailout negotiator and has been a member of Syriza for nearly a decade. Like Varoufakis, he has been a vocal opponent of fiscal austerity imposed by the core of the Eurozone, saying it has unnecessarily impoverished Greece.
I will not hide from you that I am nervous and very anxious. It's not the easiest time in Greek history to be taking on this job. There are class issues with this vote. Simple working class and middle class people who have lost their businesses said that we want a trusted government that will deliver a viable solution.
To talk more about Greece, we're joined by two guests. In Athens, Paul Mason is with us, economics editor at Channel 4 News, producer of a forthcoming documentary about the rise of Syriza in Greece, titled "And Dreams Shall Take Revenge." And here in New York, Richard Wolff is with us, emeritus professor of economics at University of Massachusetts Amherst, visiting professor at New School University here in New York. He hosts a weekly national radio program called Economic Update, the author of a number of books, including Democracy at Work, A Cure for Capitalism. Let's go first to Athens. Paul Mason, first, were you surprised by Sunday's vote? And talk about what this means now.
I was surprised by the size of it, but of course all the opinion polls were effectively rubbish, because you just can't opinion poll a country like this on an issue like this. But the size of it astonished not only the journalists but also the Syriza leadership as well. I think both the size of the rally that preceded it on Friday night visibly shocked the leadership around Alexis Tsipras. I mean, it filled the square behind me and several streets around it. It was 6 times bigger than the opposing right-wing Yes rally. And then the vote itself, you know, there's probably maybe 35%, 40% leftist voters here. To get 60% means that liberals, conservatives, or just people who are not political must have voted for the no. And I think it's part of actually what we're observing here on the ground, a very rapid radicalization of the population. I think it's probably fair to say 9 out of 10 of the media groups that are camped out here in Greece are not getting that, because they're tied to these satellite dishes that are all around me. But there is a radicalization going on, and it happened in the last 2 days of last week, when people saw TV stations owned by oligarchs pumping out not only the usual one-sided news, but actual straightforward sort of World War II style propaganda for the Yes camp. Many people said they switched their votes when they saw these TV stations break even the most rudimentary Greek, which are not very good at TV regulations, and basically they make Fox News look objective.
I want to ask you about Yanis Varoufakis, who briefly spoke to reporters after he announced his surprise resignation as finance minister on Monday.
What is happening here is just a change of the guard between something more than comrades. We are friends, colleagues, and fellow academics. Euclid and I have shared similar philosophical, ideological views for a long time now.
Yanis Varoufakis left the Ministry of Finance with his wife, Danae, on the back of a motorbike downtown Athens on Friday, 2 days before the Greek referendum. He was interviewed by you, Paul, for Channel 4 News. This is a clip of what he said.
Yanis Varoufakis, you said yesterday you'll resign if there's a yes vote on Sunday. What will you do if there's a no vote?
We're going to press ahead. We have a deal to make, one that is viable, unlike the deal that was offered to us by the institutions. The only reason why we're having this referendum, Paul, is because we were given an ultimatum on the basis of a set of proposals which we consider to be non-viable. In other words, next week, 2 weeks from now, 3 weeks from now, 2 months, 4 months from now, we're going to be still mired in an endless negotiation with the economy fading, without investment. And we thought that we should put this to the Greek people. Accept this if you wish. But if you don't, empower us with a no to seek a better deal for Europe.
So Yanis Varoufakis said he would quit if there was a yes vote. There was an overwhelming no vote, and he quit. Paul Mason, explain.
Well, look, the official explanation is that he did it to lessen the physical and sort of moral friction there is with the creditors. He has been winding them up very effectively for months, and they don't like him. The reason they don't like him is because he's US trained. He speaks perfect English and speaks the language of the IMF, the World Bank and Wall Street, and indeed Silicon Valley, where he worked. That's the official reason. I think there's an extra set of reasons, though, and it's like this. Varoufakis privately, throughout these negotiations, I think was urging a tougher stance, an earlier break. The break only really, it's called the rupture here in Greece. The strategy of rupturing with the lenders began only in June, early June. I think he wanted to do that earlier. I think he wanted them to go out to the people physically earlier. And I think the other thing is, because he's a professional economist whose entire career has been based on this critique of austerity, as finance minister, what's he going to do? The best deal they're going to get today is going to be 8 billion euros worth of austerity over 2 years, because that's what they offered 2 weeks ago. I know that he believed that deal itself is a recessionary deal unless there's, several tens of billions poured into Greece in the form of a kind of Marshall Plan that would offset it. So I think he's taken a step back. The other thing is psychologically, not unless psychologically, it's about the background of the two men. Sakalatos and Varoufakis are both people I've spoken to at length during this crisis. Sakalatos is somebody who's organically from the far left, from that new left generation that you know very well, Amy, and that your listeners probably know very well, going back to the Port Huron Declaration, etc., in the 60s. Varoufakis is not. Varoufakis came to the far left from the centre. And I think that just basically people who've been on the left for some time, for decades, that it tends to build a level of patience in you. You can do things and accept things moving slowly. Varoufakis mentally, I think, wanted to win, and he wanted to win big time, and to win now. They're not going to win now, and so somebody's going to have to sign a deal that is a compromise, and maybe they win, or they advance when they've actually shored up behind them in Greek society a little bit more support for the things they want to do. Because although 60% of people voted no, you don't see 60% of people on the streets out there protesting in favour of Syriza. You don't see 60% of people out there self-organising, doing the soup kitchens, doing the voluntary pharmacies. And the Syriza activists will tell you that's the hardest part. So I think for the strategists of Syriza, and Sakalatos is a strategist of the Syriza party, this is one step in an advance of taking Greek society down the route of a left-wing project. And maybe Varoufakis will be leading, as it were, from the sidelines. I know when I spoke to him, he was looking forward to being a backbencher.
I want to turn to comments made by the new Greek finance minister, Euclid Sakalotos, earlier this year. While speaking to Sinn Féin activists in March, he described the negotiations between Greece and its creditors as part of a wider ideological struggle across Europe.
We will be seeking to negotiate a new deal to address Greece's non-sustainable debt. No economy that has lost a quarter of its GDP, has 25% of its population unemployed and over 50% of its young people unemployed, and has 1/3 of its population facing extreme poverty, can be expected to repay its debt with a succession of years of very high primary surpluses. For all this, we need the solidarity of European peoples. Some European governments will be arguing that we should not give problematic Greeks special treatment. But you know that we are not asking for special treatment, but for equal treatment in a Europe of equals. Greece has had the biggest per capita fiscal adjustment of any economy since the crisis began. Hardly special treatment, especially when you consider that the bailout was more to serve northern banks than southern peoples.
That's the new Greek finance minister, Euclid Sakalotos, earlier this year in Ireland, addressing Sinn Féin. We're joined by Paul Mason. He's in Athens, Greece. He's been intensively covering Syriza and what's been going on in Greece. And in New York, we're joined by Richard Wolff, professor, economist here at the New School. Your response to what is happening and what the new finance minister was just saying?
I think the real importance of what is happening in Greece is that fundamentally a poor corner of Europe has said it will no longer absorb the disproportionate burden of this crisis and of the bailouts that have been used to cope with it. Basically, what is going on here is that the richer countries of Europe, led by Germany, are shifting the burden of all these crises that they are responsible for onto people in Greece. They never imagined that in trying to do that, they would generate their worst nightmare. A left-wing political organization that goes from 4% of the vote a few years ago to an ability to call out a referendum and get 60% of the people to support them. So they have generated a response, and that struggle, of which this is only one step, is what's being played out here, and that's why it's relevant to the rest of Europe and to the United States, everywhere where there's mounting evidence of people saying, no, we will not continue to absorb the costs of a system that works in this dysfunctional way.
We're going to go to break, and we come back to talk about what the alternatives are, what the alternatives to austerity are, in Athens as well as in Europe and even here at home. We're joined by New School professor, economist Richard Wolff, as well as Paul Mason, who is the economics reporter for Channel 4 News, economics editor, speaking to us from Athens. This is Democracy Now! Back in a minute.